Okay, Philo of Biblos, Philo of Alexandria, Philo the Judean. Um, he's an ancient historian, and they say he's a historian, but really he's more of a philosopher. He has an edict on philosophy at the time. He lives down in the Alexandrian area and frequents the Levant back and forth through there. He's a Roman Greek philosopher, and he's seen as being alive through the time of Christ. He writes a lot of things about the Bible and Old Testament and things, but curiously, he doesn't write anything about the New Testament. And you think that he would, because he's right there in the area whenever it all goes down. And it's one curious thing, people say, well, look, he's talking about the Bible. He's talking about the Bible. Sometimes what people don't talk about is almost as important, if not more important, than what they do. Because he doesn't mention anybody walking on water or that saved all of mankind or anything of that nature. Given the opportunity, he says nothing about it. Makes no mention at all. And it's kind of strange. They have a lot of depictions of this guy. Most of them look like this sorrow face here. He always seems to be a little bit kind of about the whole thing, doesn't he? Yeah, he's got that, these Jews kind of look on him. So let's take a look at this guy here. Sure enough, most of the pictures you see are going to start out looking like this. And this is a nice picture that's like a Da Vinci type photograph of him and gives you an idea of what he may look like. And there's been recreations done by him. There's a famous picture here that's done of him that's a sculpture, even though his nose has been a little knocked off. They say was contemporary to his time and not too much different than the first picture I showed you. So they recreated that and they get a look that looks something very much like this. You can see that. He looks kind of like that. He could have looked a little like this too. They want to put a modern haircut on him. There's more of a little Greeky Roman look. Anyhow, sometimes they even throw a yarmulke on the back of his head and make him just Jew out. And indeed, he had blue and white striped robes. But blue and white is always a symbol of the Greeks. And that's why Israel has a blue and white flag too. So let's look into a little bit of this and see. He's known for having famous sayings and stuff. He tells you, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle. And that's a good saying. It really is. Because, he's like, be kind whenever you're talking to everybody. Because you don't know the battle that's going on in their mind, in their life, in what's going on. Not that the person that you're talking to is part of a war, but people have a war going on in their own life. And so be kind. It's a great idea, isn't it? It's one, embraced in the Bible. And he really embraced philosophy. And philosophy is a story. Well, philosophy itself is the love of knowledge and wisdom. Philo means love, and Sophia means wisdom in the ancient Greek. So that's how you get the word philosophy. And Philo of Biblos, people say he was a lover of the Bible way back when. No, Biblos is just books. Biblos is papyrus writings, and Biblos is books. The Biblos would be the Bible. But Philo of Biblos is a guy that did book knowledge. He was somebody that studied in Alexandria at the great library and loved all the books and had gone through things. He was somebody who was very book learned. He would have been the, great book learned man of his time. And philosophy is a knowledge acquired by the aid of human reason alone. It doesn't require divinity. This means that philosophy does not base its knowledge on authority, but solely on the reasoning power of a human mind to get past something. You don't just give up and go up. Well, it must be God. You have to figure it out through it. Divine revelation, therefore, is formally excluded as a source of information in philosophy. Although it can be and should assist the mind of a man by pointing out to the proper direction for the philosophic solution of a problem along purely natural lines. So, this is taken in, and all the Greek philosophy is taken in and blended with, thoughts and all of Jesus's sayings. And lo and behold, you get this guy with all this Greek philosophy and stuff. And, it's well known that all the first Bibles that anybody ever has are Greek. The Septuagint itself is a Greek Bible. It's all written in Greek. And in fact, even the early Hebrew Bibles that we find have Greek words still attached into them, still put in there. And so it's just kind of a strange thing. So let's look at this. From a distance of 2,000 years, Jesus Christ appears in glorious technicolor, a veritable rainbow of power and glory. Every child knows his story. Every individual recognizes his slender frame, his flowing chestnut hair, his kindly blue eyes. But up close and personal, our superhero evaporates into the ether, a phantom that leaves no trace upon the paper, no imprint in the historical record, no trace on earth. Not only does no one notice Jesus during his supported lifetime, Jesus notices nothing of the wider world into which he makes his spectral appearance either. What we're getting at here is that Jesus doesn't tell you about anything. The only mention of Rome really is, give unto Caesar's what's Caesar's, and he doesn't talk about things going on in the world. He talks about the Jews and what's going on with them a lot, but he doesn't revelate to anything else. And it's kind of a key point telling there that he does this. But and one thing about Jesus, his flowing chestnut hair and stuff, whatever, if you adopt it in the Bible and stuff, the next thing you know, he's not going to have chestnut hair and blue eyes, of course. He's supposed to be your Savior. So the next thing you know, he's going to be black, or he's going to be Chinese looking or something. One of the ancient Greek philosophers said that whoever is worshiping that God is going to make it look like them. So you can take a god of this, and over here it looks like here, and over here it looks like them, and you wonder what that statement was about. But that statement was about themselves, actually. For the Greeks and Romans had taken their gods from just about all the pantheons around the whole world, not just their local area, and in doing so made them all look Greek, they're saying. So there's one key point to that. But as it happens, we have an excellent witness to the events in Judea and Jewish diaspora in the first half of the 1st century AD, Philo of Alexandria, who lived from 25 BC to 47 AD. So this is perfect timing, and somebody that is this knowledgeable, man, this is going to be the source. Philo was an old man when he led an embassy from the Jews to the court of the Emperor Gaius Caligula. The year was 39 to 40 AD. Philo clearly then lived at precisely the time that Jesus of Nazareth supposedly entered the world to a chorus of angels, enthralled by multitudes of performing miracles, and got himself crucified, walked on water, and did the most incredible things. Pretty much blew away anything in the Old Testament, maybe except for parting the Red Sea, huh? Well, now we know that Yam Suf is what it says in Hebrew, and always did. And Yam Suf, Yam is sea, and Suf is reeds, and it's the Reed Sea. And they never did part an ocean, and people have known this for thousands of years. And yet they still let you tell this story. It's terrible. Look it up. Look up Yam Suf, S-U-P-H. Yam is the ocean, Y-A-M is sea, waters, river. And S-U-P-H is Suf, Yam, Reed Sea. So kind of takes all the pop out of it whenever they don't part of ocean, doesn't it? Like, so what cool things did this guy do? Well, he let them all out of Egypt. Well, we don't find any point of that either, and surely not the millions of people that he had there. In fact, it would have been impossible to sustain them. So they make up a story about manna in heaven. But I digress. Don't let me go off of that. Let me just see. Philo was also in the right place to give testimony of a messianic contender, a Jewish aristocrat, a leader of the large Jewish community of Alexandria. We know that Philo spent time in Jerusalem on Providence, where he had intimate connections with the royal house of Judea. His brother Alexander the Alabarch, who was a chief tax official, was one of the richest men in the East, in charge of collecting levies and imports on Rome and Egypt. By the way, the word levies is connected to the Levites. Alexander's great wealth financed the silver and gold sheathing which adorned the doors of the temple. This is written of by Josephus in the Wars, 5205. Alexander was loaned a fortune to Herod Agrippa. This is in Jewish Antiquities on 18. One of Alexander's sons and Philo's nephews, Marcus, Mark in your Bible, was married to Bernice, daughter of Herod Agrippa, Tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, 39 to 40. After the exile of Herod Antipas, villain of the Jesus saga, he ruled as king of the Jews from 41 to 44 AD, just after Jesus' time. Another nephew was the apostate Julius Alexander Tiberius, prefect of Egypt and also procurator of Judea itself. He was kind of over Judea during his time. It's kind of like it was all under Greece and Rome, but Egypt was under them. Oh, it doesn't show this in the records, does it? Well, it's showing it here. And then under that was Judea at the time. But it flips and flops due to what happens. I mean, if something goes wrong in Egypt, they just drop that crap and absorb it in. And this is what the story of the Bible is. Much as Josephus would a half a century later, Philo wrote extensive apologetics on the Jewish religion and commentaries on contemporary politics, about 30 manuscripts and at least 850,000 words are extant. So somebody's gone through the trouble and go, man, he's wrote a lot about it. He's wrote more words than anybody about it. But out of all those extant words, nothing about Jesus. Philo offers commentary on all the major characteristics of the Pentateuch, and as we might expect, mentions Moses more than 1,000 times. Yet Philo says not a word about Jesus, Christianity, nor any of the events described in the New Testament. In all this work, Philo makes not a single reference to his alleged contemporary right now, Jesus Christ, the God-man, who supposedly was perambulating up and down the Levant, exorcising demons, raising the dead, walking on water, causing earthquakes and darkness at his death that everyone knew. He made the dead walk. And also at his death, in one of the Gospels, it tells you that all of the dead saints came up and walked like undead through the streets. None of that's mentioned here, though, either. In fact, none of that's mentioned anywhere, is it? You never find anybody talking about the undead zombies walking around. Isn't that weird? We got zombies now, but we don't. Where does that all come from? Well, there's 3 or 4 places in the Bible where it talks about the undead coming up and walking. So, it's kind of strange. With Philo's close connection to the house of Herod, one might reasonably expect that the miraculous escape from a royal prison of a gang of apostles in Acts, or the second angel-assisted flight of Peter, even through chained soldiers and guarded by 4 squadrons of troops in Acts 12, might have occasioned the odd footnote. Just any mention at all. Walking on water, all these things happening. No, not a murmur. Nothing of Agrippa, vexing curtain of the church, tearing of the cloth, killing James, brother of John, with the sword. Strange, but only if we believe Jesus and his merry men existed and that they established the church. If we recognize that the Christian fable was still at an early age of development at this time and not quite in order, Philo was pondering the relationship of God and man, there's nothing strange about this at all that he didn't mention Jesus. We know now that you figure out that he's really comes about after 100 AD, and then really they don't get all the writings together until between then. The Gospels don't show up till just before the Council of Nicaea, actually in the geologic record. You can't find anything that goes back from there. And the ones that do all have Greek prefaces, Greek writing, and Greek words mixed in with them. Even the ones that are transposed. The other ones aren't even transposed, like the Septuagint. And they still use the Septuagint today as a reference that has a lot of information in it that's not in the regular canon that they have. Even whenever they did it to Hebrew, they say that the Septuagint should be used because the vernacular, the words, and the concepts are more correct than the Hebrew. And that makes a strange statement out of it, that the Hebrew language, built supposedly to talk about God and everything that goes with it, doesn't have a solo word for God, doesn't have a word for salvation, doesn't have a word for eternity, and has to use Greek concepts to explain itself. That's strange. It is real strange. So this article goes on, and it shows that there are strange correlations here between things in the Bible and Philo's works, though. He tells you there's a certain madman. It's like the drunk. It's a crazy dude that hangs around in the streets hoping people will feed him. It's one of those bum dudes. His name is Carabbas, kind of like Barabbas. This man spent all of his days and nights naked in the roads, minding neither cold nor heat, the sport of idle children and wanton youth. So kids used to pick on him and do things and make fun out of him and things. And he allowed it to happen, I'm sure, because he'd get paid somehow, although the kids would be very mean to him, I'm sure. And they, driving the poor wretch as far as the public gymnasium and setting him there on high that he might be seen by everybody, flattened out a leaf of papyrus and put it on his head instead of a diadem. So instead of the Catholic Church thing, and clothed the rest of his body with a common doormat instead of a cloak, and instead of a scepter they put in his hand a small stick of the native papyrus, which they found lying by the wayside and gave to him. And when, like actors in theatrical spectacles, he had received all the insignia of royal authority and had been dressed and adorned like a king, the young men bearing sticks on their shoulders stood on each side of him as spear bearers, in imitation of the bodyguards of the king. And then others came up as if to salute him, and others making as though they wished to plead their cases before him, like he really was God, or he was a holy man, and others pretending to wish to consult with him about the affairs of the state, like that he was, the Caesar himself. Then from the multitudes of those who were standing around, there arose a wonderful shout of men calling out, Maris! And this is the name by which it said they call the kings among the Syrians, for they knew that Agrippa was born as a Syrian, and also that he possessed a great district of Syria, which was sovereign. So they were making fun of Agrippa by doing this, by taking the bum of the street, dressing him like him, and then calling him Agrippa and asking him. It's kind of like we make fun of George Bush, or we make fun of presidents and stuff, and they did this to George Bush by taking the town drunk and dressing him up like him, and then saying, and then going, hey, great king, da 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 da, just, like making nothing out of him. Well, curiously, you find in Matthew here that they released Barabbas unto them, which he had scourged and delivered to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governors took Jesus to the common hall and gathered him to the whole band of soldiers. They stripped him and they put him out on scarlet robes. So they do this same act to Jesus. And when they had platted a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Isn't that funny? Well, let's go with something else, too. Do you know that there was no J until about the year 1300? And so all these words with J that are in the Bible that are real important aren't those words. Words like Judea, Jews, Jesus, they aren't. Jesus would have been Jesus, right? And Judea would be in Judea. And curiously, the ancient Roman and Greek god Saturn, Kronos, had his counterpart or his origin in this same area that we all talk about in the Bible, and his name was El in that area. Just El, E-L. And you find that he has an old story written by Philo and a few others, that he had a son named Eudid. And Eudid was sacrificed in a time of strife, and it made him be deified. And they ended up naming the land after him. And then you find a land right there called Judea, and it really didn't have a J, did it? And so this land that you supposedly call a Judean land is actually Eudid's land, and the land of the god of El and the Canaanites. Even the Jewish land is not even the Jewish land. Even the name itself. The Jews would be the Jews. They'd be the ones, the sons of Eudid, wouldn't they? Yeah, the specialty starts dropping right out of this real quick, doesn't it? Whenever you find out things like that. And so El, let's look at El, the Canaanite god. Let's see if we can find him in our Bible. And maybe we can figure out what they're worshiping, because, they wouldn't have the names of the Canaanites mixed in with them. That would be terrible. But then you find out his name is El, and they worship him in a temple or a chapel. Wow. And they have holy beings called angels, and they are known as Gabriel, Ariel. Anybody getting this? Azazel, Michael. They all got L on them. Well, hold on, wait, the prophets came to save him. The prophets came to show him the right way, didn't they? Like Elisha, which actually in the Greek or in the ancient Hebrew is Eliyahu, which actually means El is Yahweh. Or the other prophets like Ezekiel, Nathaniel, Daniel. Yeah, El is rife in that. They eat big L's. They pay for them with money called shekels. Is there something that's been eluding everyone? Is it now like a big elephant in the room? Is it not the God's council known as the Elohim? Isn't that strange? It's even stranger when you find out they still call themselves Israel, which means warriors of El. And it's even stranger when you find out the ancient Phoenician word for the star Saturn was Israel. And Philo tells you about it. Kind of something they avoid, isn't it? Kind of puts it all together, doesn't it? Kind of makes you wonder how it took 2,000 years for people to figure this out, doesn't it? That's going to do it for this one, guys. But like if you like, sub me. And peace. Enjoy.